Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very, very beautiful morning right here in Brisbane. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now today we have for you the daily news update brought to you by Australian Indian Radio. And hey, it's wonderful to have your company as usual. And don't forget that from next week we will go full swing with all the features of the program back on, meaning all our functions and events and our interviews and our specialist programs, and all of those will begin. Well, right now let's take a look at Australian police say ISIS bride willingly.
A quiet town in the southwest slopes of New South Wales is where Mariam Raad was arrested. It's a world away from where she had been living since 2014. In October, the 31-year-old was one of a group of 4 Australian women and 13 children repatriated from makeshift camps in Syria. At the time, the 4 women publicly stated, "We are willing to do whatever is asked of us by government authorities to ensure the safety of our families and the Australian community, and we will fully cooperate with all Australian law enforcement agencies." Now, Ms Raad has been charged over entering and remaining in an area under the control of Islamic State. Police allege she willingly travelled to Syria in 2014 to join her husband, aware of his activities with the terrorist group. He died in Syria in 2018. Police say their investigation began when Mariam Raad was still in Syria, but they allege new evidence led to this charge. The maximum possible penalty is 10 years imprisonment.
I think today's news, I have no doubt with those ISIS families being investigated by the police, would bring some kind of assurance to the communities here.
There are around 40 Australian women and children still living in Syrian camps. Save the Children says this police investigation shows it's possible to repatriate them while ensuring the safety of the community. If there is evidence that any of the women have committed crimes, then the appropriate place for them to be charged and prosecuted is in Australia, where we can put our faith in the country's robust judicial and national security architecture. The federal government says there is no ongoing
complex the problem there, because as we know, there are certain rules and regulations which apply to a country of their residence, and when the jurisdiction falls abroad, like meaning with your ties with another country such as Australia, there are complications, and I hope that there is a good resolution coming out of this inquiry. And if you look at those conditions under which people are living in those tents, it's atrocious. Well, China is going to partially lift the sanctions on Australian coal. So there we go, coal still makes the news.
China's top cabinet yesterday pledged to secure energy supplies for the country. There were blackouts in China over the past couple of years during times of mass demand. Now, it wasn't caused by the lack of Australian coal, but it was exacerbated by China's ban on Australian coal. So this is one reason there's domestic pressure for the Chinese side to make sure the lights are continuously kept on. But I think the bigger reason, Dan, is simply the improvement in the Australia-China relationship, the recent meetings of Anthony Albanese and China's leader Xi Jinping, the recent presence of Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Beijing. This, no doubt, would have some sort of major factor in the Chinese government ordering 4 state-owned companies to resume purchases of Australian coal.
Well, so that's for coal, but what about other exports, Bill?
Well, the coal resumption, I must say, is only a partial resumption. We're only talking about 4 companies, 3 utilities and 1 steel mill, which have been given permission to start buying Australian coal again. It's all being sort of filtered out second-hand through various reports. So we're not getting official confirmation from really anybody at this point, but there is some suggestion that April is the month when these coal shipments from Australia Australia to China could resume. But as you say, coal is only one of several export markets that were hit by the Chinese government over the past couple of years, primarily in 2020 as part of retaliation for what China believed were political issues that it wasn't happy with Australia. So the lobster industry, which is highly reliant on Chinese exports, they are seeking a return to China, although they have been quite effective, it seems, in the past few years, getting lobsters into China through a back route through Hong Kong. Also, the wine industry, at its peak, China was Australia's biggest export market for wine, more than $1 billion a year of plonk being shipped to China. That's all basically come to an end because of high Chinese tariffs, which once again appear to be politicised. So there is hope from the lobster industry, the barley industry, the wine industry, that they too will be able to get back into the Chinese market. But Dan, most importantly, I suppose, coal was the biggest component of revenue for all those Australian export industries that was hit. So quite soon we could see Australian coal on ships heading back to China.
Well, a very good report there put together, and looking at that, coal tops the list of all those like the wine, the lobsters and the other things that have been count. Well, of course, there is a big income and for Australia. However, the Greenies and others have a different view on that sort of income, because it is taking away all the natural resources of the land, and we are taking away from our future generation, so they say. Well, there you are. Well, like staying on China, let's take a look at the next report on China, which is on the COVID testing of arrivals.
Mother and daughter reunited after a nervous wait.
How do you feel? Exciting.
These travellers from China and Hong Kong were among the first to land in Sydney and Melbourne on day one of Australia's new screening measures. They needed to record a negative COVID test, allowing reunions like these. Taking a test was easy.
I didn't notice anything different from normal, apart from 5 minutes getting the test.
But the timing of it was confusing.
Our flight was like 9:20 Hong Kong time, which is past midnight Aussie time. So we're like, do we get a test or not? So we just got it anyway.
More than a dozen countries have imposed similar measures, with growing concerns about the lack of information being provided by China.
There aren't many significant destinations you would be flying to from China that don't require this pre-departure testing arrangement.
Beijing has been reporting daily COVID deaths in single figures, but the World Health Organization believes the real figure is much higher.
With circulation in China so high and comprehensive data not forthcoming, as I said last week, it's understandable that some countries are taking steps they believe will protect their own citizens.
Beijing has criticised countries imposing the border controls, calling them unreasonable, although China also requires people to record negative COVID tests before entry. Come Sunday, China will ease some restrictions, allowing tourists to leave the country freely while removing the need for quarantine upon arrival. In the year before the pandemic, 1.4 million people visited from China. Last year, that figure was barely 30,000. With restrictions easing, that number is expected to start rising again, just in time for families to celebrate the Lunar New Year together. Danielle Maher, ABC News.
And the Lunar New Year is coming, and of course, plans are made, and there are lots of local festivals and festivities that would be taking place as well, apart from people coming in from overseas. So it is wonderful that these things are happening. Well, I think, this is something which was probably needed to be done from the very beginning, that have all these safety measures in place, testing pre-boarding and testing on arrival as well. And if someone's found to be not only COVID, there could be other diseases and whatever that, to stop the spread. If someone had come on a flight and is very, very sick, they needed to be, seek medical attention straight away. Without being, let to go out into the community. So these kind of measures should have been in place without travel restrictions, and that way we would have been in a slightly different position than what we are right now. Well, what about Medicare? Our doctors say that the Medicare system is broken, is it?
Victoria and New South Wales lead the charge, describing Medicare reform as the most urgent national priority.
There is not a premier in this country who does not believe that change needs to happen at a federal level to the GP network.
With difficulties accessing bulk billing GPs, premiers say patients overwhelm hospital emergency departments. Queensland agrees.
What we've seen over the last decade or so is the slow choking of the primary healthcare system.
The states want the issue discussed at the next National Cabinet.
And if we can actually see the Australian government lift a finger and do something in this space, having talked a big game in the lead up to the election, we'd like to see them deliver something.
COVID, rising obesity and chronic illness are all contributing to increased pressure on primary health care. Doctors say the $28 billion in annual Medicare funding falls well short.
We've found that even for some of the simplest items for GP consultations, the shortfall has been of the order of $8 billion over the last couple of decades.
And as a Government Commission review of alleged Medicare fraud continues, the AMA is reassuring Australians any new money would be well spent. That includes the $750 million the government is promising for the Strengthening Medicare Fund.
We said at the election that there was no higher priority for Labor in the health portfolio than strengthening Medicare and rebuilding general practice in particular.
Something state premiers will be keen to pursue at National Cabinet early next month. Annie Guest, ABC News.
I totally believe that, the bulk billing. Well, in Australia today, with everything going online, bulk billing should be just compulsory, that each and every doctor, they get paid to whatever their dues are. But, for patients to do that, then going lodge a claim and whatever should not be a priority. It should be every GP should have the facilities to do a bulk billing, and they should also receive their funds ASAP as well. So there you go. For patients to go out and pay the lot and then have to reclaim it. Of course, you get your money, but having to go through all that process should be, streamlined. It should be cut, so make it more efficient. The system needs efficiency. Well, right now, on the King, the Elvis, still lives on, and we know that this annual festival that happens, and that train where everyone boards from Sydney to go to Parkes.
Well, you couldn't help but fall in love with the Elvis Express this morning. It departed from Central Station at about 8 a.m, making a streamline towards the central western town of Parkes, just in time for the 30th anniversary of the Elvis Festival. Now, the festival is expected to turn the town into a sea of Hawaiian shirts, bejeweled jumpsuits, as well as grass skirts, and that's to honour this year's theme of Blue Hawaii, and that's a tribute to the 1961 musical hit as well. So it's going to be an exciting day ahead for every Elvis fan and lover alike. So who better to talk about the Elvis Festival than the King himself, Emilio Prince, Elvis tribute artist. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, thank you. So tell me, what are you looking forward to most with the Elvis Festival?
Catching up with all the fans, getting to perform live back on a stage again, it was just amazing, and enjoying myself. So, and everyone else, meeting new people, new faces, and yeah.
It's a really exciting time, considering the last 2 years there was difficulty with the festival with the COVID cancellations as well as the flooding impacts. So are you excited to go back into town?
I really am. Like you've said, it's been a long time since we've been on the stage, and getting back in there, doing what we love and helping our community out, that's what it's all about.
And this year it's going to be extra special. It's the 30th anniversary. Can you tell me, what are the events that people should be looking out for?
There's a lot of rock and roll. There's going to be over 200 events happening during these few days. It's just going to be an amazing experience for us all. If you like rock and roll, there's swing dancing, there's all types of dancing, there's Elvi, and yeah, there's other tributes as well, like Frank Sinatra, Engelbert Humperdinck, everything.
Amazing. And this is your first time on the Elvis Express. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very good, baby. I'm ready to rock and roll.
I love it so much. Can you give me a little taste of your Elvis tribute artist performance?
Oh, most definitely. Love me tender, love me dear, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so.
I love it. Thank you so much, Emilio Prince. So the town is expecting to nearly double in its population over the next few days, and the festival is going to generate over $15 million to the local economy. It's especially important considering the year that's been with the record-breaking floods that have devastated the town. So all aboard the train and the Elvis Express heading to Parkes for the Elvis Festival.
And how exciting is that the king just lives on. Well, right now, moving on, not so good news, but let's take a look at this the scene of the deadly crash at the Lodge Pine.
The scene up there is devastating and incredibly confronting for even experienced collision investigators. It's incredibly traumatic for all emergency services that were there and for the community. It's absolutely tragic, but I'd like to stress that these sorts of incidents are avoidable, and that's the ripple effect that it has on the community, not just the people involved in this, is absolutely enormous. The blood tests will be taken from both drivers, so we'll get a definitive assessment of that in due course. But look, it's a high-speed collision. Even if you're travelling at 80 kilometres well below the speed limit, it's still going to be a high-speed impact. But there isn't suggestion that there's any excessive speed.
And there is very, very unfortunate news, but we don't hold being accountable for this, but we have been informed that it could be people of Indian origin involved in that incident as well. Very, very unfortunate. Right now, Union New South Wales says they are with Parrot on the gambling reform.
The Premier's push to introduce cashless gambling is beginning to pay off.
This is a significant and important intervention by the union movement.
Unions New South Wales is backing the Coalition's plan to transition to cashless gaming cards in pubs and clubs.
The thing that we need to do in New South Wales is make people think one more time before they put a paycheck through the poker machine.
Only 3 months ago, the union leader threw his support behind Labor at its state conference.
We have a student politician premier. We have a fragile state treasurer who has the temper of a toddler.
But by speaking out, Unions New South Wales is at odds with Labor's stance on the issue, as the party won't commit to a permanent change.
We are not opposed to a cashless card. In fact, what we have said is we want an expanded trial to include pubs and clubs.
This is the time when we could have a bipartisan position on this.
Labor says it wants more evidence before introducing reforms.
Does Labor have an actual example of what this trial that you guys are calling for would actually look like?
Well, look, Chris will outline all of these things in the lead up to the election over the next few days and weeks ahead.
Clubs New South Wales declined to comment, but is staunchly against the move.
And that's why I've called today for everyone to come together to stand up to this behemoth.
This debate started after a Crime Commission report recommended mandatory cashless gaming cards to help tackle money laundering, but it's now become a much bigger political issue, and the Coalition has found unlikely allies in the Greens and now the Unions.
I say to Chris Minns, be on the right side of history here.
We have to work through this methodically, carefully, and give it great consideration, because what we want to do is actually improve the situation.
A topic that's shaping up to be a key election issue. Cameron Gock, ABC News, Sydney.
And a key election issue it will be, and of course, if they can, control that gambling and the gambling age, that would be wonderful, especially when people are on social benefits and they go and use that money up in there. So it will be a way, with that card, it will be a way of recording the money that's being spent there. Well, right now, let's go to this Western Sydney, which is emerging as a key battleground for New South Wales election. And of course, as we know, the Western Sydney also has a large population of people of Indian origin.
All right, how are you, mate? Nice to meet you. It's the start of an election year and the battle for the West has already begun. If New South Wales Labor wins the election in March 2023, we will build a high school at Melrose Park. The state government is already funding the redevelopment of the local primary school and says it's close to purchasing a site to develop a high school. And yet budget after budget, the funds just aren't there.
Look, we've already committed to both those schools. What Labor's doing is just they're playing catch-up with government policy.
With the opposition's $54 million election pledge came two new Labor candidates, Ryde local and teacher Lyndall Howison and Parramatta Lord Mayor Donna Davis. Both women are in electorates with retiring Liberal MPs and are hoping to turn their seats red. Any political party that hopes to represent the state of New South Wales should look like the state of New South Wales. But Lyndall Howison wasn't Labor's first pick for Ryde, after initial candidate Francisco Valencia withdrew after an alleged domestic violence incident last month. My understanding is that it is in front of the police, and I can't offer and won't offer a running commentary in relation to that. Miss Howison will be campaigning against former Ryde Mayor Jordan Lane, who was the Liberal candidate hoping to replace outgoing MP Victor Dominello. But the Liberal Party still hasn't announced its candidate for Parramatta, a seat Jeff Lee has held for 12 years.
I just want the next person to commit and ensure that they also deliver record funding for Parramatta.
The ABC understands the Liberal Party plans to announce its candidate for Parramatta later this month. But with its long-standing incumbent retiring and less than 12 weeks till the election, it's a seat that could go either way. Cameron Gock, ABC News, Sydney.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you today in this segment. And we really, thank you for joining us on the show. And as I mentioned, that we still have the weekend edition coming up tomorrow, but we will not have the doctor's program, which will resume probably from next week. There's many other programs which will all start getting back to normal from next week. But right now, it's time to say goodbye from this segment. It's been wonderful having your company as usual. In Brisbane, it's just a wonderful sunny day today, around 28 degrees, getting up to 29 later in the day. Just an amazing part of the year.